yourself. All right. I don't think we're quite live yet. All right. Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel on point of view, choosing your perspective. We're going to have a wonderful deep craft of writing conversation, which is my very favorite to do on this kind of panel, talking about the strategies and tips and options when choosing the point of view through which to tell your story. I'd like to have the panelists introduce themselves. Elle-Marie, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Elle-Marie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author. My most recent novel, The Promise Keeper, I won the Golden Stake Award for that. I have it here, but I'll hold up the book instead. For this one, my most recent short story is found in the Bram Stoker finalists anthology called Sycorax's Daughters. And I love writing. Can't wait to talk some more about it today.
Perfect. Meriah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, howdy. I am Meriah Crawford. I teach at Virginia Commonwealth University. I've done a lot of work with point of view, actually. It's a topic that's a favorite of mine, and looking forward to it.
Joe?
Hi, I'm Jo Walton. I write science fiction and fantasy. I have published 15 novels. And I love point of view, and I love playing with point of view. Point of view is great. It's one of my favorite things, so I'm really excited for this discussion.
Yes, when we last minute lost a person, I was like, who would like to be on a panel about point of view? I know, Joe would love to be on a panel about point of view.
Yeah.
I'm Ada Palmer. I also write science fiction and fantasy, and I also study history and literature, so I love thinking about point of view and looking at historical documents. And I know I look like I'm sitting in the dark, but in fact, it's just that there's something weird about my camera that always dims it. So you can just pretend that I'm a vampire down in my cairn if you want to. But in fact, the camera, there's nothing we can do. So I will sit in darkness. I would love to, boy, it's easy to plunge in. Well, before I ask a starting question, does anyone of my panelists have a thing you really wanted to start out with, or a thing you're burning to say that you're going to be distracted by thinking about until we get to it?
Well, the thing I'm thinking is probably going to be an answer to one of your questions, so I kind of feel like I'm going to
jump in and go.
For me, point of view is a lot about feeling. You know, what are the characters doing? What is happening in the story to make the characters feel that way before I even write anything? And once I can decipher, you know, where I'm going to go, what speed I'm trying to get there, that's how the feeling of figuring out what the point of view should be happens for me. I don't go in with a mindset of saying I'm going to write it this way. This is exactly what I'm going to do. Not at all. Now, I guess I'm a pantser. Just fully, like I don't literally in every aspect of writing. So point of view is very much for me about feeling.
Well, that reminds me of a thing that was one of the questions I wanted to talk about, which is one of the questions with point of view is from whose perspective are we going to see things? But another question with point of view is, okay, it's going to be this character. How in this character are we? Are we following this character from outside? Are we inside this character's point of view? If we're inside this character's point of view, are we watching live this person's experiences from right now? Or is this person thinking back on and describing this from later? So that there's dozens of different point of view options, even if it's already the same character. Would any of you like to talk more about the range of, let's say we've already decided that our POV character is going to be Juliet, then the huge range of options we still have about that, within that.
Juliet's a really interesting choice because she does not, spoiler, she does not survive the experience. Sorry if I ruined it for anybody. And so that's actually one of the times people usually use present tense. I just on Facebook today, somebody was talking about how much they hate present tense and how awful it is. Oh. And actually the character who doesn't survive the piece is a great, the point of view character who doesn't survive. That's one of the times you use present tense. But you're talking about past tense, but decisions within past tense. From when are you? Right. From when are you what's your timeline? And the long past tense timeline is a really fascinating one to work with, because if Juliet, say she lives, Juliet is reflecting on her childhood from the age of 50, say, that's an entirely different book, because they are entirely different people. Juliet at 13 or whatever she was is a different person, you know, on the cellular level, but also very, very much intellectually in every possible way. So I think that's really fascinating. And I'm assuming we're talking about Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Is that what you had in mind?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I had in mind. I hope that's where
Thought it would be a stimulating name choice. But you made me think of a couple of examples where the POV character does die, but it's still past tense reflective, where it's as if the person is reflecting back on their life in a final, you know, your life flashes before you kind of thing. So Grave of the Fireflies, which famously begins with, you know, XYZ date, that was the night I died, and then goes back through the circumstances surrounding the death of the narrator.
Right.
That kind of structure can also work very well, and you get something different, right? Because if it's the person not knowing, then, you know, the significant moment, that's the last time they see X person, is just described as, I saw X person and we did this, and then we move on, and we don't, as the reader, know. Whereas if it's written reflectively from our narrator, who knows that this is the narrator approaching their death, you get a very different experience where the narrator can be saying, ah, yes, the very last time I saw X person. And you can imagine, let's say it's Juliet, right? The last time she converses with Romeo or sees Romeo alive, she describes very differently if she's a Juliet who doesn't realize that she's going to die, versus if she's a Juliet who's reflecting from the tomb with the dagger in her hands, looking over the story and thinking on this before she takes the final step.
And something can be in somebody's point of view without being in first. So you can write a third person Juliet point of view in which she dies. And again, even within third, you've got all of these exact same options in terms of how close in you are, whether you're in present tense, all of these kinds of questions. And also how reflexive. It was the last time that she saw him. You've got all of those options in third and in omni as well as in first.
Because
Absolutely.
in third person, you can be following her, just physically describing what you would see if it was a video camera. But you can also be following her, you know, her heart was racing, she was afraid, she felt blah, 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 blah. That can all be there in third person. As you
Interior third person is almost first person. They're right next to each other. It's really interesting.
Oh no, it isn't. Oh no, it's really, really different.
Let me say, it can be. It can be written very much like first person.
So when something's in first person, and we sort of touched on this already, when something's in first person, that is a person telling a story. And even if it's a brain dump of somebody's brain, it is a person shaping a story that they are telling. I did this, I did that, I do this, I do that. Whereas in third person, however close in you are, however much of their thoughts you're sharing and everything, it's being shaped by an external narrator, not by that person, in terms of the story that you're actually getting, which makes it really, really different. If I change something from first to third, everything changes.
You know, I think I see both points in that regard. Interesting that you mentioned that, Joe, because what I like to say when I'm talking about, you know, this POV with students is that third person allows you the distance required to tell the story. But when I say that, you're telling the story that the narrator would see. Therefore, it is being spelled out in front of you and you're not actively part of it. You are just relaying what you actually are seeing from a distance. First person, of course, removes all of that distance and brings it more closer in. But I also understand where Meriah is going in terms of how personal a third person can be in certain instances. And I think the difference is living it versus telling it. but they can both be quite intimate.
If you don't have a dramatized narrator, there's no like intelligence between the reader and the third person. If you're going that route, the more sort of like 19th century, very present narrator who sometimes addresses the reader, that's a whole like different end of the spectrum.
Yes, that's omni. That's neither third nor first. That's omni. It's its own thing.
It's still third person.
No, it's omniscient. It's a separate thing.
It's third person omniscient.
Well, it can be first person
Different
omniscient.
categories.
Yeah, they're really quite distinct, I think.
Can you give a clear example of what you would call first person omni versus third person omni?
Okay, first person omni is like Jane Austen, or where the omniscient first person narrator addresses the reader and says, "Dear reader," or where it'll step back from giving you a conversation and give you little did he know,
Right.
kind of thing. Whereas third person omni is like Dickens, where it is basically what you might call head hopping if it wasn't well done, where you can just go into the point of view of any of the characters. So an example of that is what I call bestseller omni. So if you read something that is a bestseller, very, very often, if the characters go into a hotel and the desk clerk is checking them in, you'll go into the desk clerk's head and see the desk clerk looking at them to get that angle on them. But you're always distanced, you're always in third. So it's multiple third, and people call that omni. Whereas 19th century omni, like Jane Austen and Trollope and George Eliot, is very much that kind of first person omni. I mean, there's a bunch of variants of first person omni as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've ever separated it in that way before. Joe, you explained some things that were, I mean, I think that we knew those different categories, but I never actually considered it first person omni. Interesting.
Yeah, how to name it.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I think it substantially relates to how opinionated the voice is, how much the voice is like a person bringing a slant and a focus in this, right? And when it starts in with, a young man with a fortune must be in search of a wife, by saying it that way, it's full of opinion, it's expressing its position. You can, for example, identify the social class of that voice.
Right.
Voice has a social class.
Yeah.
And that voice is from Britain, right? That voice is from a place, from a social class, from a certain environment. Whereas the voice that is Dickens, while it's true that its vocabulary is English, you can't name the social class of the opinions of the narration, because it's shifting from character to character.
And also, the example I usually give of that, social class is perfect. The example I usually give of that is that the first person omni narrator has a sense of humor. And you can tell whether they've got a wry sense of humor or a broad sense of humor or no sense of humor at all if they're very, very, very humorless. and you can't, but they're kind of sharing a joke with the reader. That first line of Pride and Prejudice, not only does it give you social class, it's also funny.
But I wonder, do we separate that into first person? I don't know. I still feel it's third. I'm feeling it's third.
It's not. It's
Just
neither
third person.
first nor third. It is omni. Or omni is its
Third
own.
omni.
First
Third
person
person
omniscient
omniscient.
isn't a thing. It within the field of literature, all that stuff you're talking about is referred to as third person. It's
Different layers within, but definitely, I feel like it's still third. It just strikes me as still third, but different, definitely. But
It's definitely a thing that needs a name.
yeah.
That's quite distinct from any of the things we associate with third. which is interesting to observe, where third doesn't feel like it should be able to have a social class, for example. The character who is being followed can, but that there be a separate one. Because you can easily, there are examples, for example, of 19th century novels where we're following a lower class central third person character, and yet the class opinions of the narration are clearly upper class opinions, talking about the lower class character. I think Moll Flanders does that.
And Mrs. Gaskell does it a lot.
Interesting.
And George Eliot.
I don't know if you're...
George Eliot in Writing Omni will actually address the reader as I. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry, Meriah, you were saying something before we got off on the tangent of first person omniscient. I was interested in where you were going with it.
Oh dear, that was a while ago.
Sorry.
I don't even remember, to be honest, where we were going at that time. Somebody did ask if there's anything in first person plural. The one thing that leaps to my mind is the Virgin Suicides, but within sci-fi fantasy, are you guys aware of first person plural narratives?
So I have a half-finished, not even half-finished, a partly begun novel, which shifts between first person plural and first person singular, because the narrator is a inhuman symbiote living in a human host, but capable of separating from the human host. And when they're connected, it's we, and when they're separated, it's I. And that's a space in which the we and the I are both very real, because the character is quite different when mentally connected with this host from when not, and is a neat thing. I'm not actually sure whether that story will ever get finished, but it's an example of a space where first person plural makes sense. But I think one of the challenges of first person plural is you have to have a strong reason for it, because it's unfamiliar to the reader.
Yeah, Nick
Fondly Fahrenheit.
Sorry?
Fondly Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah. Can you describe what's going on there?
It's a person and a robot, and they are traveling together, and one of them has done something, or maybe the other one has done something. And the we is perfectly valid narration for deliberately blurring a line and making that story really, really, really work.
Mm-hmm.
Be hard to do at greater length. I mean, Bester was always doing really virtuoso things like that.
Yeah, Alfred Bester is who we're talking about, the author of The Demolished Man and The Stars My Destination. But he has a lot of short fiction that does very experimental things with structure or POV or using weird characters on the keyboard.
Somebody else mentioned Anthem that starts with we. That's Ayn Rand. I don't know how to pronounce her first name.
Yeah, it does.
And then somebody else mentioned the 5th season and second person. I'd be delighted to talk about second person a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to start that?
I was definitely planning on second person being one of our topics. Do you want to lead us off?
I have researched that in particular. And one of the things I like to mention about second person, because a lot of people are like, oh, that's just gimmicky, or nobody really uses that. It's something that is very much used with regard to trauma. So if you look at war narratives, they often use a lot of second person. If you watch even news stories in the aftermath of a disaster, you often see people just naturally switching into the second person. It's worth listening for. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff out there about that uses second person. And I do think that trauma is really awesome for it. Reflection is really great. And then I also like to mention the choose your own adventure stories. So an awful lot of people spend a lot of time reading second person through those kinds of books. And I think they're fun, and they're a great way to sort of empower and motivate kids to really take an active role in literature. So I think that's very cool.
I think Choose Your Own Adventure is a perfect example of something that's genuinely second person. Many things that are often cited as second person are in fact first person speaking to a particular person.
Mm.
That would be the
First-person direct
case
address.
for the Jemison. She is addressing a particular person, her daughter, and she's telling the story to her daughter. And so she's saying you about a particular person. And the same with Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life. It's like a letter that is addressed to a you, rather than actually being a story told in second person. Whereas Choose Your Own Adventure books are 100% second person.
Yeah, without there being a first person that goes with that second person.
Right.
There is no addressor going with the addressee. There is only addressee.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess another way to call those would be to call them addressee second person and addressor second person,
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to nestle them both within the second person sphere. Because you also get the thing where, you know, in Diderot's Jacques Le Fataliste, or in any of these 18th or 19th century things where the narrator sometimes addresses, oh dear reader, you may think blah, blah. The presence of that, which is, you know, 100 paragraphs out of the whole book, in one way does make the book actually be second person. But it's second person addressor. And in those cases, the addressor very much overwhelms the presence of the addressee in that relationship. And you may have a book that the dominant narrative experience, if you flip it open to any random page, feels like third person with a strongly opinionated narrator, or a first person omni focusing on a third person, but it'll have these components of second person within it, hybridizing, which is a deep hybrid, as opposed to what you're mentioning where there is just you, and the you is the reader and the you is the character, and there isn't a separate person who's the speaker.
Yeah. So I think the trauma examples that you gave are also genuinely second person, and there isn't an intercessor there. That's really second person. And the other very, very, very common use of genuine second person, which is quite similar, is in porn, where you get a lot of pornography that is you do this, you do that. I've no idea why there is this edgy experimental technique that is used in these few weird situations, but it is.
I can see why that would be used in erotica or porn. That makes logical sense to me if you were to engage in reading something like that, depending upon whatever you were searching for, you know, in that reading experience, it being told what to do, say, or think in that manner would make sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't personally find second person erotic, but I can see that it might be a kink.
Well, you're making me think about, you know, in a nonfiction context. I'm in the middle of a nonfiction book about the Renaissance, and there's a section in the middle where I'm doing a bunch of mini biographies that are 2,000 words, 3,000 words, 4,000 words of different Renaissance figures as we move forward in time, and they're all lives that overlap, so we see them intersect. And in the second life, you meet the first person in the first one, and the third one you meet both of the earlier people, and it accumulates over time. And where am I in the sequence? The 11th one, we've been in Italy, and this is getting into the wars in 1492 when things get really, really bad and really, really dark. And we've had a lot of point of view from Florence, and a lot of point of view from figures in Rome, and the wars are getting more and more terrible, and a lot of people we care about are being killed by the Borgias and by the violence that's being started up by the Borgias. And the Borgias, for about 25 pages, have been this looming, distant, ominous enemy that the different characters have all been describing in differently fragmentary but chilling ways. And then for the 11th life, we are suddenly Lucrezia Borgia, and the entire POV is reversed, and suddenly when Cesare Borgia loses a battle, it's not, we finally defeated the monster, it's, oh, poor Cesare, and then we have to work to help him. And I'm switching into second person for that bio, which makes it that much more vivid. It makes the shock for the reader of, all of it is nonfiction, suddenly being in her POV. And, you know, this happened and you felt this way, and you said in a letter that you wrote, quote, blah, blah. and you were horrified when X happened, is a way of exaggerating the emotional intensity of the rapport of the reader suddenly being in the opposite POV from where the reader has been used to thinking of this as enemy. So that kind of juxtaposition of POV, just like switching narrators, it is a form of switching narrators, even more extremely. We've been switching third-person narrators every few pages for a while, and now we're switching into a second-person narrator, which makes it feel that much more different.
Somebody in the Q&A is mentioning unreliable narrators and noting that to some extent all first-person narrators are unreliable. And of course, I would say everything is unreliable, but it is really, really interesting. One of the pieces of literature, this is you know, literary fiction, but The Absentee is really neat because it's got multiple layers. It's told by an unreliable narrator, but there's also an editor, and there's footnotes and so forth. And the editor is also sort of an unreliable narrator. It's really this nice multi-layered thing. So if you're interested in that, it's a great thing to read. But unreliable narrators in general are pretty common, and they're really fascinating.
And they work in lots of different ways. There's been a lot of discourse around unreliable narrator questions with my Terra Ignota series. And one of the fun distinctions that one can talk about there is there are different ways and reasons a narrator can be unreliable. And there's a very interesting difference between a deceptive narrator who is intentionally deceiving you, deceiving the reader, and a sincere but incorrect narrator who is attempting to tell what they believe is real, but is unreliable in various ways. So you can have a narrator who's deceptive, like, and then there were none, that's the other title of 12 Little Indians?
Yeah.
Which is the Agatha Christie, where the POV you eventually discover is lying to you about what's happening on purpose to conceal things that are going on. Which is very different from, you know, your narrator has been deceived and doesn't realize that what really happened was this, or your narrator has been fed propaganda and genuinely believes that the state they're describing is good, but that narrator doesn't get it.
Or your narrator is a child and doesn't really understand, but you, the reader, will understand what the child is, you know, the child is innocently reporting, but you're understanding more than the child narrator can understand.
I have a specific story that does that. I recommend this to everybody because it's a great way to think about point of view. It's called The Haircut by Ring Lardner. It should be out there free. It's really neat. It's a barber giving a guy a haircut and telling the guy getting a haircut a story. And it's really clear that the story he's telling the guy is not what really happened. It's his very innocent interpretation of it. And you get to think about, so part of it's sort of told in second person to this guy getting the haircut. You can put yourself in his shoes, getting his haircut by this guy and hearing this horrific story. It's wonderful. Definitely check it out. It's another really great story to read, to think about point of view.
And a genre example would be Flowers for Algernon. And that's also an example of what we were talking about before, because it's a diary. So it's in first person, not knowing where it's going as in each entry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another great element of POV, is the question of how much does the narrator know when the narrator writes it? If the narrator is narrating from later, is the narrator narrating from the night after the thing happened, and then the next chapter they don't know what's going to happen until they're writing that chapter? Or does the narrator know from the beginning everything that's going to happen? So in Gene Wolfe's Soldier of the Mist and Soldier of Arete, for example, the narrator has the kind of head trauma that makes you unable to transfer information from short-term to long-term memory, and is writing down everything that happens in a scroll that says on the outside, read this every morning. so that he will know what's going on. And it means that in every entry, he only knows what has happened until that entry and doesn't know what's going to happen in the next entry. But it also means that sometimes he doesn't have the scroll for weeks and things are missing. And sometimes someone else had the scroll and wrote something in it. And the scroll as a physical object is endangered and threatened and moved around. But it means that at any given entry, that entry knows what has just happened, but doesn't know what's going to happen next, which is very different from a, X date, that was the night I died, where the narrator from the beginning knows everything that's going to happen in the story and reflects on all of those things. And then narrator foreshadows and says, oh, poor doomed so-and-so when you first meet them, which has a very strong effect on the reader's emotional arc. Do you guys have other examples of interesting narration relationship with time stuff like that?
Jekyll and Hyde is worth looking at. And man, I wrote about that a while ago and I'm a little hazy on the details right now, but as you go through the book, he has more and more distance to look back on what happened. And you can see how the perspective changes. And man, I'm hazy on the details on that one.
I haven't read that in so long. I'm just struggling to remember. And I'm also distracted by the fanfic conversation happening in the chat.
I've read so little about it. I think one of the things that I'm going to mention, I always talk about, I call this the orange book, and then I always forget the name of it, but I have it handy at the moment. This book, I don't know, I have to turn off my
hold it on an angle. There we go.
And are you seeing it backwards or are you seeing it forwards?
Forwards.
Okay, I'm seeing it backwards. It's a pretty neat book because it's told through records basically. And so you get these like chat transcripts and scrawled notes and it's all over the place. And then there's this like sort of stepped back level of, so all of the records are sort of contemporary with the events taking place, but then there's this level where you have two people actually, one guy conducting an investigation and another person giving him orders. And so that's more like immediate. It's a really interesting book from a point of view standpoint because you get all these different narrative modes. And we've mentioned epistolary stuff a bunch. I do think, especially with the old epistolary like Dracula and an awful lot of 19th century and earlier novels and later novels were written as letters at a time when you'd send a letter and it might take weeks to arrive, if it arrived. Now, of course, we have email, but Illuminae is kind of cool because it gives you that sort of, we're back here in time looking at this stuff that happened, or sorry, we're forward in time looking at this stuff that happened in the past. And it gives you different interpretations. I think it's neat because it lets the reader do a lot more work and get a lot more involved and have to really interpret a lot more.
You're reminding me of House of Leaves, which is another.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about it, Elmarie?
No, I'm not through it yet, but you brought that to mind when you were talking. It definitely came to mind. I haven't finished it.
Using documentary framing and footnotes and
absolutely,
and, having the text be modified later,
right,
is one of the narrative tools.
Right. Yeah, I think I want to revisit it now. I mean, I haven't just not gotten through it yet, but it definitely is a good one. You mentioned Dracula, and that definitely, yeah, whoever's commenting on House of Leaves, I agree. But the comment about Dracula brings to mind what is out now in terms of email communication, because it kind of, email ruined the whole letter writing, basis of stories like that. And I think that's one of the things that makes those, at least Dracula, that much more interesting because it's written in epistolary form. But what now in terms of email? Have you seen anything like that?
Oh, there's tons and tons of things.
Really?
Yeah, tons and tons of things. And sort of like, there's a lot of things that when email first started coming along, you would have people doing epistolary things in email, and now you have, it's not so much email as texts.
Mm-hmm.
And things done that are using that. And within genre, an interesting example of an early example of this early internet example is Vernor Vinge's Fire Upon the Deep, where he has large sections of that book take place in a kind of intergalactic Usenet. And the perspective that you're getting from the people who are the aliens who are participating in that, none of them are human, or practically none of them, is a wonderful perspective that you're getting, that is an additional perspective to the rest of the book. And that is definitely, it's not epistolary, it's its own thing. It is a chat room forum thing, part of the novel. But there are lots and lots of things that are doing email. None of them are particularly good or notable or sort of worth mentioning, but there's lots of them.
You're reminding me of one, the text message one, in what's it called? I Am a Hero. This is a zombie apocalypse story, a very let's think through carefully how the world would actually shut down a zombie apocalypse story. And it cuts back and forth between, you know, the POV character and what's happening, and there are zombies in a very straightforward way. And then the text message boards of local, this takes place in Japan, it's actually a manga, but of local geeky shut-ins who are many of the last survivors because they never go out and they're isolated anyway, and they have large stores of food in their tiny little apartments because this is a thing that happens in Japan a lot. And so as everything else is shut down, they're many of the last survivors, but they don't dare go out. So you're just watching them die off one by one in their rooms, but they're having a conversation over a Usenet-like discussion board, and you're watching them joke about the apocalypse that they've just watched, and watching an interesting intersection between mental illness and apocalypse, because these are people who are mentally ill, who have been, this is part of the hikikomori mental illness epidemic, which is a big in Japan. So it's a very interesting way of layering a POV on top of a reflective POV, where they're not, we're seeing what the zombies are doing in the other POV. It's, this one is a sample of how an interesting subsection of humanity is talking about and thinking about extermination via internet stuff. Yeah, I know the darkness is looming. It's a well-lit room. I don't know how to explain. The camera always does this. But shall we talk a little bit about when we have first, oh, did we lose Meriah? No, yes? Okay.
Came right back.
Good. When we have first person, but we are gradually learning about our first person narrator, how we learn about our first person narrator, the processes of this unfolding, which is related to questions of narrator reliability and unreliability, but is also a separate structure, because you can have a narrator who is very reliable, but you're nonetheless discovering that narrator gradually.
Is the question, how do we learn more about the...
Or interesting examples, right, of works that you've looked at or studied, or tricks you've seen writers use, where the manner in which we learn about who the first person narrator is works in an interesting way or unfolds at an interesting rate. You know, Joe gave the example earlier of something that's from the point of view of a child, where you'll often have to do a lot of figuring out, okay, what kind of child is this? What kind of house is this? What kind of family is this? Where are we? Because the child won't be describing those things as directly as an adult might.
So the classic genre example of this would be Roger Zelazny's A Night in the Lonesome October, which is sort of told from the point of view of Jack the Ripper's dog. And because he's a dog, he doesn't really understand what it is that they're doing when they're going and doing things. and he's telling us what's going on. But you know, I thought when you were asking this question, am I allowed to talk about Too Like the Lightning? Because you know, that's the perfect example of the first person narrator, where we slowly discover more and more things about the character who is telling us this story. And he says in the first chapter, he wants us to have the chance to trust him and learn to like him before we find out about him. And then we do find out about him, and he was quite right. We did.
Well, and he says in that opening paragraph that we will hate him when we learn about it.
Yeah.
And you have the extra mystery of what will it be that he thinks we'll hate him for.
And some people genuinely do stop reading the book when they get to that part, when they find out. Yeah. No, I couldn't, but some people do, because
and others keep reading but do in fact hate the narrator from that
yes.
point on, whereas others still love him and then have the complicated ethics question of what does it mean to love him. He tells you from the very beginning that he's a convict, which is a hint of the category of what's happening.
To answer the question, this is Ada Palmer's Hugo nominated To Like the Lightning that I am talking about.
Does a lot of things.
Yeah. Yes. But I think that people buy into narratives that they make up about the character, and this is actually something that you're playing with very cleverly there, but which can be a problem, where the writer isn't giving the reader information and the reader's filling in information, and then you get the real information. And I will sometimes find the information I have filled in is more interesting than the real information when I get it. And I'm disappointed when I find it. I think, oh, is that all? Is that what it was? Not this much awesomer thing that I thought of myself. That can be sort of like, it's a dangerous game to play. And you do it in a really terrific way that really, really pays off, at least for me as the reader.
Yeah, but it's a risk.
Yeah.
And the longer you hold back a piece of information, the more you have to pay that debt.
Yep.
Which can be risky with first-person stuff, but can also be a great payoff, right? And you'll sometimes have the thing, first person in English makes it doable to conceal gender of the narrator, and there are a number of works that have used that in clever ways to reveal only quite late in the work gender and have the gender be unexpected, and sometimes it's very powerful, but sometimes it also fails.
And the other thing is, it used to be very powerful, but now it's lame, because now we're used to it. We've seen enough examples of it that it just doesn't work anymore. And I ran across an interesting example of this a few years, actually about a decade ago, where it's not gender, it's concealed homosexuality of the narrator. And it's a book that I had read in the 80s. It was written in the 70s. I read it in the 80s. I thought it was brilliant. And I was really, really impressed with this. But a friend read it about a decade ago, and she was like, it was so obvious he was gay. I don't even know why the author did this, to try to hide it. You know, the reader is obviously going to get this. And the truth is, you know, in the 80s, no, the reader was not obviously going to get that. But by a decade ago, 15 years ago even, I think it must have been, then it is obvious because it's been done. And that I, where you don't gender, it was amazing when Melissa Scott did that in The Kindly Ones in 1987. But if somebody does it now, it's just like, I want something much more interesting than he or she.
But I think it's still powerful when it's within a genre or something where you had a really strong reason to expect the one thing and then you get the other, and that can still be powerful, but in a different way. in a different way, usually as a commentary on the genre rather than anything else. Right, the end of your shoot 'em up space video game, where your burly spacesuit wearing warrior hasn't taken their helmet off the whole time and then takes the helmet off and it's a woman, is still surprising and exciting because that's moving into a male-dominated space. Not in the same way that it would have been powerful decades earlier, but is powerful in a different way, but mainly within the microclimate that is a particular genre. I love that I can vaguely see my ghostly hand.
I did that exact thing in Friday, spoiler. The Friday is a first-person narrator, and it starts off with an attack and an action scene and an escape, and very, very much in the kind of like bang, crash, escape, male action mode. And then when the character finally escapes and gets home, the character is addressed as Miss Friday. And again, when I read that in 1979 or 1980, I thought that was the cleverest thing in the universe. And of course, it's still going to be the cleverest thing in the universe for 14-year-olds.
So we've only got 5 minutes left, and we had several requests in the Q&A for talking about jumping POV from multiple third-person or multiple first-person narrators. So we should talk about that at least a little bit. Obviously, what we need is 3 hours to talk about. You.
It's a big, complicated topic. I will say that I've seen books do multiple first-person points of view. You but from one chapter to the next. I've seen people very effectively do multiple third-person, where each chapter is a point of view. It's rare for that to be done effectively within chapters. Not that it can't happen, but unless you really know what you're doing, tread carefully there. So if you're attending as a writer, that's definitely something to be really cautious about, because it will confuse the heck out of your reader really easily. But you can do some really complex stuff within that.
Yeah, I'm working on one just to kick that around right now, where the handoff is actually within the chapter as opposed to separated by chapter, because I don't want to call that easy, but that's cleaner, right? I mean, it's distinct. So I'm trying, you get the break and you know where now someone else is talking, period, or someone else's mind, we're looking at through someone else's eyes. But I'm trying the handoff like within the same chapter, almost within the conversation, so that someone's saying something and they're thinking about what they just said and, oh my gosh, should I have even said that? And the response to the phrase is then we jump to the other person to hear that response. I will tell you, it's very tricky. As a writer, I confuse myself sometimes. What am I saying right now? Who's speaking? But for me, that's the fun of it. I mean, it's the fun of writing, right? I mean, if I'm going to try something new, it should be difficult. It should hurt a little, and it's that, so that when the final product comes out, hopefully, fingers crossed, I've kind of mastered this thing and figured out how to make this, inside one chapter thing work. But very, very difficult to be sure.
Mm. Are you doing like scene breaks or like a line break? How are you?
I won't let myself, because again, I was like, that's too easy. So I'm literally, right now, in fact, when we're done with this, I'm gonna get back to it. I'm working on within a conversation. One person is thinking about what they just said, and the other person, then we will jump to that person's head so that they can have their thoughts about what was said to them.
Don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home.
Sherilyn,
question somebody asked in chat about what book I was talking about with a concealed homosexual narrator. It was Sumner Locke Elliott's The Man Who Got Away, which is also very interesting from a time perspective, because the story's told backwards.
Oh, nice.
I was just going to say, Sherilyn Kenyon has a fight scene between, I think, 2 werewolves, and she switched heads in the middle of that, and it was something that actually kind of needed to happen. There are definitely times when you have to get 2 different people's perspectives, and I thought she handled it pretty well within that particular novel. It's doable.
Mm-hmm. We are out of time, but it's been lovely, and As usual, the optional conversation can continue in the Discord channel, whose link will be up on the closing slide in a moment. I've also typed a couple of answers here and there. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, panelists. That was a lot
Thank
of,
you.
I do wish we
Thanks,
had twice as
everybody.
much time.
What an interesting conversation.
Yes.